Whenever you have a series with a character with a type of future sight, you have the instant difficulty of subverting audience expectations. Because no matter what, if you have someone that can accurately predict the future, you need to find some creative way to change the pathway of that future, or to somehow make events that people knowing of this future would end up making it a lot worse, or a third other option that could just surprise any and everyone who reads or watches your series. Does that make sense? Well, long and short of it is, if you have a character with future sight, you have a very difficult job to actually make the story tense and surprising. And Four Knights of the Apocalypse is so far doing an interesting job with this, with the character of Guinevere. When we got introduced to her during the Leonis arc, we learned that her ability was called kaleidoscope. Every time she goes to sleep, she ends up dreaming up future events from either her perspective or to people related to her in some way, shape, or form. Anything from where Gawain's location would inevitably be at, to potential future plans that the Four Knights would end up doing, or to how the time skip of Four Knights of the Apocalypse opened up, Arthur and the Four Perils laying siege to Leonis, and having a confrontation with the Seven Deadly Sins, ending with seemingly Bon dying. That is how we opened up part 2 of Four Knights of the Apocalypse, with Guinevere having this nightmare, and it being a future prediction of what will happen in the story. And that leaves us with the question of, what are the events that lead into this? How could this be subverted? Or are we already stuck in this entire pathway to this godforsaken future? Well, that's what I'm going to think up today and go over what potentially has changed since her initial predictions all the way back during the end of the Leonis arc. Before we jump into this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And don't forget to hype up the video with the new hype feature to help boost this video in the algorithm. It'd be very much appreciated. And if you like comic books, go and check out my second channel, GW Comics, where I talk about American comic books. Mainly right now DC and Batman focused, because that's what I'm catching up on my own time. It's a passion project, and I would really appreciate it if you guys go and check it out. But with all that out of the way, let's jump right into the video. So when it comes to thinking of how things have either gone off the rails or have still not diverged from the future pathways that Guinevere has dreamt up through her future sight abilities, let's just step back to all the initial predictions that she had previously had. Primarily in chapter 87, which is the first time we get multitude of moments that she specifically talks about and the times when they are supposed to occur. When she's talking to Lancelot about her future sight abilities and how she has dreamt and met Lancelot through multiple instances throughout her dreams, which is why she seemingly knows him super well in the events that will transpire, she talks about meeting Lancelot for the first time at age 16, which is what we saw in the Leonis arc. Then at age 18, he snuck into the tower to see her, which actually just happened right now in chapter 218 of the Four Knights of the Apocalypse manga, right in the middle of part 2 of the story in the time skip. So, 2 future predictions are already out of the way. That leaves us with 2 more, at least for Guinevere interacting with Lancelot, or at least important plot beats that we'll visit in the future. Because next up is age 19, when Lancelot is supposed to kiss Guinevere for the first time. So that's another year from where things have occurred in the story. And then at age 23, he will become a renowned knight in the service of the king. Now this has a few implications, but due to the fact that in chapter 217, we saw that King Arthur was still alive and was separated from Cath, and the villain that we've been following thus far has been Cath in the skies of Arthur, it could mean that Arthur and Lancelot are going to team up, and Arthur will have Lancelot be one of his first knights of his actual round table that seemingly Four Knights of the Apocalypse is building up to. Now, in terms of age 19, this could be before a big climactic fight, or before going off to find Arthur. And this also means that we're going to be seeing 2 different time skips going forward in the story. These are 2 big moments that Guinevere has specifically pointed out, and Nakba specifically wrote in, that we were going to be getting to. Since half of them have already come true, the other half are seeming to head into that direction. And since after the events of the time skip happened, we already got the second prediction for Guinevere, chances are we're still on track for these next 2 predictions. However, predictions have already been wrong, because all the way back during the Walnack arc, In Chapter 91, Guinevere gives a prediction to Arthur on the events that would transpire during Walmack, where Lancelot and the four knights would enter Walmack and go to a hotel. And even talks about the specifics of people sleeping in specific rooms, as well as two specific knights that will end up going to try and assassinate them, but Lancelot would quickly deal them with no one else noticing what would happen. And being told this information, Cath immediately decides to alter his plans. We still get the assassins, but he adds in a few extra things. The first major change is sending over Io and having her demon friends brainwashed, waiting outside of Walmack to lay siege, and Io placing a magic barrier around the entire town, blocking off people's perception of magic energy. But this also messes with Lancelot's ability to read minds, which never led to Tristan being the one to get a lone room and not Lancelot. And this also being the case that Io would end up being in that room as well, changing up the story. And so, from what we can get from this, means we already are off track. And due to this, instead of everybody going off towards a different location, which would be Dol Mari in the initial prediction, they all head straight to the Demon Realm. And since Arthur already sent a number of knights led by Mortledge to intercept the four knights in case his assassins and the demons failed, they also had to go to the Demon Realm, which led to many of these Chaos Knights being captured, including Nanashi, and Mortledge dying, but this also led to the unforeseen circumstance of Percival learning his origins and subsequently dying for 2 whole years. Which is already a big, massive way of diverging from the timeline, because based on what we've seen in Guinevere experiencing the story multiple times through her dreams, these events have not changed. But since she is experiencing all these moments for real now, she basically caused Cath to diverge from the timeline. And Guinevere warns that changing things from what they should be will have dire consequences. Now, for Cath, we don't know what that is. It could just be for the fact that, Nanashi, Arthur's biggest and most loyal knight, is captured, and other knights have been either killed or now are imprisoned. But for the good guys, it led for Percival dying, and in real life, seemingly, Arthur got weaker over the 2 years that Percival was gone. And this led to Camelot taking more of Britannia, perhaps faster than we initially expected. But we still have the relative stalemate that we have. It's just that the four knights are now scattered, and this makes things a lot easier for Camelot to deal with things. And so now the Sins, mainly Bon and Meliodas and kind of Gother, having to deal with stuff on their own in their recent areas a lot more frequently. As we saw, we open up the time skip with Bon saving Vanya. But this now leads me to the big prediction at the start of the time skip, and what we all think this time skip is going to lead into: the invasion of Leonis and Cath, disguised as Arthur, facing the 7 deadly sins. Now, I've already made like a baseline discussion video talking about how Lancelot saving Guinevere, now that we know Zero Sign, will lead into a bunch of unforeseen consequences. Well, it's very possible that since we've already seen the timeline and events change or shift previously, pre-time skip, right now, Guinevere's prediction of the future might have been the actual result, because even she was surprised by this dream and said that this was a reality and future that we should not be heading towards, and that we should make sure never happens. Her implying that they need to change fate, which she has said previously would mean that a bunch of dire consequences. That is the key aspect of us already changing things to the point where we're having a much darker future. And it being teased that the Sins will lose in this confrontation, and seemingly Bon will die, and someone will tower above Bon with a bloody spear in hand. Now, we all thought that maybe this would mean that Lancelot would betray everybody and join Arthur. I don't think that's the case. It could just be the fact that Lancelot perhaps just massacred a bunch of people and ended up making it too late to save his dad. We don't know. But this very pivotal event is too big of a, plot point and very all is lost moment, intense fight that we do kind of want to see all the rest of the remaining Sins, minus Merlin's for the time being, since she's off protecting Arthur. And Escanor is, dead, so there's that. Which I think, going back to that previous discussion video I had, Lancelot saving Guinevere, and by the looks of chapter 218, perhaps even being responsible for saving Guinevere's family and friends, or other countrymen that are being held captive by Cath to have her go through with the wedding. It's very possible that this all happens, Cath finds out, and he gets pissed, because this also makes him take away the potential of breaking Guinevere down to the point of her being the future predicting machine that she wants to make things easier. Thus could lead us to the future of Cath and the new chaosified Four Perils waging war on Leonis, going straight there, laying siege to it. And this would lead to the Sins all having to fight, but it being not the complete roster. With Merlin confirmed alive, but in a different location far away, protecting the main body of Arthur, we might have to see all the Sins fight not just Arthur, but all the Four Perils, missing Merlin, a key aspect of the group that could hold the tide and potentially keep Cath at bay with her vast knowledge of chaos. And after all, she was the one that took Arthur from Cath, separated them, and left, and had been hidden for, well, nearly 20 years. And this would lead us to the future of, at the bare minimum, Bond dying and Leonis being razed to the ground. And this could be another instance, just like in part 1, where the story leaves us with a potential time jump where things seem lost for the heroes, where everything seems to have gone to shit, where the main villain managed to secure victory and wiped out the previous generation, the strongest characters in the series, the biggest nullifiers to his power, and those that opposing him, outside of obviously Lancelot and the Four Knights. Adding more weight, responsibility, and tension to the need to, well, stop Cath and save the world. Because now, the Sins, the strongest characters in the universe, outside of Cath now, and potentially Arthur, once he gets his strength back, are gone. Which means now the Four Knights are all that stand in the way of Cath and taking over all of Britannia. Now, I don't think all the Sins will die. I doubt Nagaba's going to kill off everybody, because I do think to add tension and stakes, he's going to have to kill off, at least one or two of the Sins. Chances are it's going to be Bond. He is the most beloved character and arguably the strongest next to Meliodas. So take out one of them, and that'll make things a lot more tense, because that's one nullifying factor out of the way. Or you can kill both Bond and Meliodas, putting more pressure on Lancelot and Tristan, stepping up and basically filling in the shoes of their parents, and perhaps leading their own kingdoms. But therein also lies another question. If the Sins are fighting Arthur after the events of Lancelot, taking Guinevere, why wouldn't the Four Knights also be in that location if this is what is going to be the event that caps off part 2? Well, I think this could actually lead into the prediction of Lancelot serving or being under Arthur, the king. Since we're being led to believe that Gawain is the key to finding Merlin, and by extension Arthur, with them being the key to stopping chaos and stopping Cath, they would have to go on a journey. And we've already been teased this earlier on in chapter 207, with Lancelot getting prediction from Bartra, relatively vague, but the Four Knights are going to have to go to another realm to face off a new group of characters. So, this makes us think that the Avalon arc is going to be a thing, which means if things are the way they are due to certain things changing from the past, we could argue that all the changes that we've had in the past, in part 1, towards the end, going into part 2, and events shaping out differently, this can mean that the end result was the Four Knights learning about Merlin and her way to nullify chaos, and going out on this journey at a different point than they initially thought. Maybe if Percival didn't die, they would have gone to find Arthur and Merlin way earlier on, and by this point, Arthur, the real Arthur, would be leading the charge against Cath, and things would have changed out differently. Or maybe, due to the events that have happened pre-time skip, we have gotten these events much earlier than we initially thought. Perhaps this assault on Leonis wasn't supposed to happen in this way, and due to the butterfly effect of things from the past changing and altering, led to the Four Knights leaving for Avalon, perhaps later than anticipated, or earlier, it depends, and thus Arthur comes to Leonis when the Four Knights aren't there, when Lancelot's not there, meaning that they are short 4 incredibly powerful allies. Well, if you want to add in Balin and Naziennes, 6 incredibly powerful allies to help in the fight against Arthur and the Four Perils, then it makes sense that we had this big tease at the beginning of the time skip. those past events have changed, and now we're on a crash course towards this inevitable bad end. We don't know if all the Sins die, but we know at least Bond seemingly dies at the end of this confrontation with Arthur in Leonis. Now we also need to know why all the Sins are in Leonis, but that could be explained away at a different point, like a strategy meeting, to figure out what's going to happen with Kath going forward while the Four Knights go off to find a Merlin. That could be a thing that happens. But either way, Guinevere's dark future is going to happen, and it was actually due to Gawain's own hubris. I didn't focus in on that at the beginning, but it really is all Guinevere's fault. If she didn't tell Arthur the actual truth of what was going to happen in that time, then Arthur, aka Kath, wouldn't have sent the demons, wouldn't have sent Mortledge and his crew, and we wouldn't have the sidetrack of the demon realm. Meaning the Four Knights would have splintered off into their own groups for their own reasons, and thus, all these future things that would have happened. We wouldn't have gotten a demon realm arc, we wouldn't have gotten a personal learning of his origins perhaps earlier than he was initially meant to do, and he wouldn't have died, leading to the Four Knights fracturing. Granted, they did get stronger, but perhaps they were supposed to be stronger much earlier on than right now. And with Percival gone, it made all these things just crash into a variety of different ways, setting us onto a almost doomsday scenario. And it was all because Guinevere was bragging and saying that Kath can't change the future unless drastic things will happen to, punish Kath in some way, shape, or form. But it's seemingly right now, it's punishing everybody but Kath in this instance. And that is really because Guinevere is the one that, by all technicality, changed the future by divulging these future events to Kath, without realizing that if these events changed, it led to a butterfly effect, drastically changing the whole timeline, because that whole segment of the story turned out to be a very pivotal one. And even if it was meant to be relatively mundane for Lancelot to handle while no one else realized what the heck was going on, she changed it into being one of the most pivotal events in the story. And it was because she was so confident that Kath would listen to her, or just would go according to script regardless of if she told him or not. And that's kind of why this whole future sight aspect is very interesting and is done in a very fun way, that it isn't super integral throughout the entirety of the story for us to constantly be going back and forth with Guinevere, because otherwise tension would be lost. But with how it's being set up in multiple instances and us seeing things diverge in these ways, it kind of makes the future sight character feel like they're responsible for all the horrible things that are happening in the story. Which, I like it when that happens, because knowledge of the future can drastically change things for the worst, because you have no idea how future knowledge will alter things going forward. But yeah, we're heading towards this dark future that Guinevere saw. She's been utilized pretty decently up until this point for this purpose, and while I do think we are now going to explore Guinevere as a full-on character starting now, she is, in fact, the one responsible for that dark future she saw at the beginning of the time skip. And we are barreling towards it with every single chapter, and it seems that right now, Lancelot saving her will probably end up leading into the fight between the Sins and Kath, and it leading to at least one or all of the Sins dying in this confrontation, and Leonis getting destroyed. But what do you guys think? Do you think I'm onto something? Do I think we are barreling towards and seeing this whole big final scenario of the Sins all dying by Kath's hand and Leonis being destroyed due to Guinevere's, hubris of saying stuff about the future? Do you really think that everything has changed because of that one moment in part 1 with Guinevere talking about the future? And do you think we will actually still get those specific moments in the future that she had told Lancelot about? Let me know in the comment section down below, and what else do you think could happen with how the future sight has ended up. And once more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. It really helps and shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. I can't wait to see what happens next in the story. And with all that said and done, hope you all have an awesome day.